Okay guys, just on the site of our latest studio, which is 5.2 by 3.5. Let's have a little look round. So this one's quite hidden in the back of the garden. We're actually in West London, where space is a premium. So last time we were here, we got the outer shell up, got the rubber roof on, which is just laid on at the moment, and then obviously the wrap, the waterproof wrap on the outside. The concrete base was done prior to us getting here, which is kind of nice and flat and very smooth, so that was easy to bond the base plates. So on this particular build, I'm going to be doing some SketchUp plans on exactly how to build each stage, and we're going to release this as a how-to PDF, which will be downloadable. Obviously we'll have some cost to it, but we're going to try and include a parts list of all the sort of insulation, all the timber, everything used. So if you want to do your own build at the same size as this, then you'll have the footprint of that and obviously a step-by-step guide. So that's going to be coming shortly. Obviously put in the comments if that's something that you might be interested in. We're also going to be doing some bespoke size drawings as well. So if you wanted to do a specific size, we could also, for a cost, we could design that for you and obviously give you the plans so you can do a similar thing. Today I'm going to be doing three main things. The first is to get the electrics in, so go around the room and obviously get all the electrical first fix done. I'm then going to get the first layer of insulation into the walls, which is just friction fitted, and I'm also going to be doing some sealing of some of the joins. So wherever we've got panels that join together, I'm going to seal those up. And then sort of later on this afternoon, I'm going to get the second layer of insulation on, and then I'm going to finish off getting the insulation in the ceiling. If you're actually a member of the channel, we've got about 17 members now, I'm going to be giving a little bit more detail on some of the specifics. I'm going to get set up now, guys, and I'll bring you back shortly. So I've now got all the tools set up. I'm going to start positioning the electrical cable, where that's going to go. I've actually talked with the clients where their sockets and switches are going to go, so we've gone through all that. There's about 8 sockets around the perimeter of the room, 1 external socket on this one, which we'll come to. Well, I'll explain that when we come to it. So if you're kind of new to the electrics at this stage, but you want to sort of try your own first fix, it's fairly straightforward. So if you're doing the ring main, so basically we're going to start off with a cable where the consumer unit's going to be, and we're going to run that round and obviously pull it out of the wall wherever you want to socket, and then that just sort of loops around and goes to the next socket. And then obviously once it finishes, it comes back to the consumer unit, that's the ring. So for that cable, we're going to be using 2.5 twin and earth, which is this stuff here, and that's a 50-meter drum. If we're doing lighting, so in this one we've got an external light, we've got an internal light, and we've also got the fan system. So we've got an inline fan that sits outside. That's going to be using 1.5 twin and earth. Obviously, if you're not in the UK, it's going to be slightly different in terms of the cable and the colours. So this is really the UK only that I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm going to start with the 2.5 twin and earth for the sockets. So I'll keep the camera running. I'm going to start over in this corner, so that's roughly where the consumer unit cable is going to come in, which is like the armoured cable. Let me just show you that actually. So the customer's already had the armoured cable brought from the house, so it's coming sort of down the fence. We've also got an armoured Ethernet cable which is clipped to it. So that's going to sort of come around here. I think it's going to come into the building around here. So we're going to have the consumer unit. It's normally about 1.2 meters off the ground, so we'll put the consumer unit here, and then down here we'll have a socket for the Cat6 Ethernet cable. What I'd normally do is go around and mark about 14 inches off the floor. That's kind of a decent height for the sockets, which are all surface mounted. I just like to keep all the cables nice and straight. So I'll make a start on that now, and I'll keep explaining how these electrics are working as I go along. See you in a bit. The first step is to measure up from the concrete base. I mark 140 centimeters, which ensures the consumer unit will end up about 120 centimeters above the finished floor level. Next, I measure 35 centimeters up from the floor. This gives me a socket height of just under 30 centimeters. Again, a practical and standard position. With the measurements marked out, I begin installing the ring main. Using 2.5mm twin and earth cable, I run from the consumer unit location and clip it neatly around the perimeter of the room. Wherever a socket will be installed, I pull out enough cable to make the connection later. Okay guys, so just got to here. This is where we're going to have an external socket on the outside, which is going to be, you can't actually see it, but it's going to be down there. So it basically is exactly the same. So obviously I've got the feed coming this way. Obviously this is coming out to a socket. What I like to do is use a spacer. It was about 18 inches. And basically that just means all your tails coming out of the wall are the same. Don't forget you're going to have insulation and another wall in front of this, so you need plenty to pull it through. So yeah, when it comes to this bit, all I'm going to do is drill a hole through the wall and actually just do one of these tails, but going outwards rather than inwards. And obviously you can put a waterproof double socket on that, and then that way it's part of the ring main. Let's get on with it. The other top tip, guys, is it might not be obvious if you've never done any first fix electrics before, but when you're actually unwinding the cable, make sure you unwind it like this. Otherwise, you'll get in a twisted mess. And you want to make sure all your cable is nice and flat. And obviously when you're going around corners like that, it's all flat. And there's no twists in the cable, which potentially might cause an issue. Obviously just keep it all nice and flat, and obviously make sure you don't uncoil that in the wrong way. It sounds pretty obvious, but you can get in a right mess with the cable, so just make sure you uncoil that in the way it's been wrapped in the first place. Anyway, let's get on. As I continue around the room, I make sure to keep the cable at a constant height. This way, when the air conditioning unit is installed, there's no risk of damaging the wiring. Once the circuit is complete, the two ends of the ring meet back together and I tape them ready for connection. That is the ring main in. I'll just run through that again. Obviously you'll have seen that on the video, but obviously started here. I've actually labelled these up ring. Started one leg of it, came round here. Obviously got first socket there. I try and get it a little bit away from the wall, because obviously the inner wall's going to be around here. Obviously you want to make sure you can plaster around that wire, because it's a bit of a nightmare for the plasterer otherwise. So you've got one socket there, two, again away from the wall, 3, 4, 5 is an external socket, that's going that way. 6 is this one, and then obviously the tail of that goes all the way. I've kept that high up the top because I know the aircon guy is going to have to cut through here afterwards, so obviously make sure that's out of the way. Run it through the top, back down to here. So just mentioning the aircon, that's going to be on the front on this one because we haven't got much space on the side, so the aircon unit's going to be here. So what I think we're going to do is double batten this and then hide the pipes behind the cladding. But the next thing with the 2.5 cable is to come from here, and then we're going to go round here and out, and that's, or sorry, out there. That's going to be for a rotary isolator switch on the outside corner, which obviously will power the aircon unit. So let's get that in and get on to the next job. I also run a separate 2.5mm cable directly from the consumer unit to the wall where the AC system will be connected. Okay guys, that's all the 2.5 cable in. Made a little adjustment here because I forgot there's supposed to be a socket here as well. So I've just modified it, took that sort of back down there, and obviously made a bit of a link for an extra socket there. And then I've done my AC feed, which goes from here to there. Obviously this will be the main consumer unit. This will come into the back of the main consumer unit, and obviously the armoured cable will come through here and do a bit of a pull through. So the next job is going to be getting the lighting and the fan feeds in. So there's kind of 3 bits to this. So we've got the outside light, which I've got going to sort of position here. We've got the inside light and then the fan isolator switch, which will drive the fan, which will be outside, and that just refreshes the air in the room. So obviously we'll get to how that works in a later video. So I'm going to be using 1.5 twin and earth for this. which is this stuff. So this is fairly simple. I'm just going to take a feed from, this is where the outside light's going to be. So I'll take a 1.5 feed out here, and that's going to go up and out here where the outside light's going to be. The inside light, going to take a feed from here, go up and then come out somewhere in the ceiling, leave plenty on that to dangle through the inner ceiling. And then finally the fan, there'll be a feed that goes, I'll have to work out where it's going to go, but somewhere at the back for the external fan. And then the fourth thing I'm going to need is just a feed from the consumer unit. So probably go up there and then down here, which will power each of those 3 items. So let's get the 1.5 cable installed, and then I'll give you a rundown of how all that works. I start by running a dedicated supply from the consumer unit to the first fitting, which is the outside light. From there, I loop down to feed both the central light and the fan. To position the main light correctly, I measure and mark the center of the room, then run a cable from that point back to the switch location. Finally, I run a separate cable to supply power to the fan. This one follows the same perimeter route as the ring main and will eventually be drilled through the wall to connect outside. Okay guys, that's all the 1.5 cable done for the lighting and the fan. Let's just give you a quick heads up of how that works. So the first thing I did was get a feed from where the consumer unit's going to be. So this is a 1.5 feed. This is basically going to power the 2 lights on the fan. So this comes from here all the way around the top and comes to the first item, which is the outside light. And basically what I've done is I've just looped it down to the next item, which is the spots, and then looped it again to the fan. So it'll power those 3 items. We've also got the outside light, which literally comes from here, and then that goes outside. It's just going to be in the sort of middle at the top. And then we've got the spots. So I did a feed from here all the way across there, and I've left plenty on that because obviously getting the second ceiling in is quite difficult if you haven't got plenty of length on those cables. Finally, the fan, that goes down there. I've done that around the sockets, so it just clips at the same height, and then up here, and then that's going to go out through a 4-inch hole. The inline fan's going to live in a box outside, so that's going to be on that side. And then on this side, there's going to be another vent hole, and that's going to be a passive vent. Obviously, once we get to that later on in a different video, we'll talk about how that works. But for now, that's all the first fix electrics done. I'm just going to get these 2 holes cut now. So let's get that done, and then I'll bring you guys back. Okay guys, so that's all the electrics done. Before I get to the insulation, I actually forgot one vital step, which is to seal all the gaps in the building. So one of the things we started doing was actually caulking in between all the joins. So we obviously prefabricate all these panels. So this is a 120 panel, there's another joint. So wherever you've got a double timber, is going to be a join in our scenario. So what we actually do is use some of this siliconized acrylic sealant, which is super cheap. It's only like £2.50, £2.60, something like that. Just something that will fill that gap. It's already pretty tight, obviously stop sound escaping through that area. The other thing we do is up at the top here, where you've got essentially like a 1 centimetre gap where the furring strip is. Obviously that goes down to about 1 centimetre there. So what I started doing was filling that with expanding foam, which is just like a sort of general expanding foam, this sort of stuff. Expanding foam in there, and then on the other side, obviously you've got a slightly bigger gap. Obviously we'll put the rock wool down there, so that's all nice and snug. And then the final thing is on the base plate. If you've seen any of our other videos, we have a treated base plate, and we've got OB1 silicone on the inside, and OB1 silicone on the outside, and then we've got a DPC over the top here, which runs, and then obviously any water that hits that can actually just get away from the building. So you've got a tiny little gap here, which is kind of difficult to seal with the damp-proof core. So what I normally do is just on the perimeter, take off the DPC, just knife that off, and then obviously we can get a nice bead of silicone. I use silicone at the bottom just because just because I can. Don't know why, but yeah, normally use the multi-purpose silicone around the bottom. As I say, the joins in between, I just use that slightly cheaper acrylic sealant. So let's get on with that.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
Let's go, guys, for spreading the cork, an old credit card.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.
Job done. Okay guys, that's the room all prepped for the next stage. So which is going to be the Rockwell. Let me just turn the camera around so I can show you what we've done. So that's all prepped. We've got all the electrics in. We've got a DPC down at the bottom for the second layer of insulation to sit on. That's just stapled to the base plate. If any water or moisture got in, obviously that's going to stop it traveling through the Rockwell. But to be fair, the Rockwell is rodent resistant, moisture resistant and mold resistant, so it's pretty good stuff. So obviously we corked down all these joins. We also corked down the join there where the actual panel sits on the base plate, and obviously I cut that little strip off so we get a better finish. Done a couple of pull-throughs for the armoured cable. The reason being is going to be metal cladding on the outside, so it's easier to pull the cable through afterwards, so we don't have to sort of cut around it. And the same for the Ethernet armoured cable, which is down there. Aircon is going to the side of that wall. Obviously I've got my lighting switches there, main lights, got the fan feed going through, and then I've got this 4-inch plastic ducting. That's for the active vent, and then the passive vent, we've got another 4-inch. These are 6 meters long, by the way. That's just going out, that'll have a vent on it. And obviously this will come into the room somewhere over there. So yeah, I think what I'm gonna try and do now is I'm gonna get all the Rockwell in from the van. This is a bit of a walk. So I'm gonna get all that Rockwell sorted now, and then I'll bring you guys back once I've had a bit of lunch. This is the Rockwell reality, guys. It takes a lot of packs for this building, all different types. Obviously we'll go through some of this when we get to it. But yeah, I've carried as much as I can in from the van. It's just like, it doesn't seem possible that all this could go in the building. But there we go. Okay guys, can't put this off any longer. I've just had some lunch. It's about 30 degrees outside. Gonna have to get this first layer of Rockwell in on the walls. Yeah, so I'm gonna get these in. I'll bring you guys back in a bit.
Trying to get me down, but then I get on up. Into the sea I drown, and it won't shut me up. Now they tell me I'm dumb and I've had enough fun just running around, 'cause I feel like I carry a gun on the tip of my tongue, but now I'm done.
That's the first layer in the walls. I'm going to leave the ceiling till later on, just before I'm about to go, so I'm not sort of getting Rockwell on my head, or I might have to put a jumper on. It's just so hot outside. It's literally 30 plus degrees, which for the UK is pretty hot, and obviously especially when you're dealing with Rockwell. So yeah, the next insulation is going in, and this is going to be a blanket covering over the top of this. What we're going to do is actually, we'll build it up in a brick-like fashion, so horizontally. So I'll get the first layer in around the room, get the second layer sort of staggered, and then the third layer I'll have to pop some fixings in. So just a 100mm screw with a washer, and that obviously just holds it against the stud. So it actually becomes part of the outer shell. And as I say, the next layer, which we'll do another time, is the RW5, and that has we have like a 2cm gap between the RW3 and that, which sort of decouples it. So yeah, I'm just gonna get my mask on. Probably not actually gonna record this because the camera stopped working because of the heat. So I'm just gonna crack on, and let's get all that in, and we'll bring you back in a few minutes. Okay guys, that's the next layer of rock wool in. That was pretty brutal in the heat. It's actually just calmed down a bit now. The sun's gone in, so it's not too bad. But the last thing I'm going to do today is get the rock wool in the ceiling before I can hit the road and get home. So I'm going to get that done now, and I'll bring you guys back at the end to have a quick look around. The last task for the day is insulating the roof. I use rock wool friction fitted between the roof timbers. When we built the roof, we installed 38.5 centimetre spacers. This allows 40 by 60 centimetre slabs of rock wool to fit snugly into each gap without the need for fixings. By planning the spacing correctly, you also minimise waste. That completes this stage of the installation, and with the cables and insulation in place, we're ready to move on to the next step in building the soundproof studio. Okay guys, that's all the rock wool in finished. That's quite a lot to do in one day, and it's been pretty hot. It's about 6:30 now. I'm just about to hit the M25, so hopefully traffic will have calmed down a little bit. But that's the room all rock wooled. Thanks for watching. Just to mention again that this build, we're going to be doing a SketchUp drawing, pretty much like what I'm thinking is like a how to build this studio this size, and we're going to be releasing that in a few weeks for a set cost. So if you wanted the plans for the whole build from start to finish, SketchUp plans, which are very detailed. But anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.